Because we as women want to nurture that out of men sometimes. We think we can just take care of them enough if we just show up a little better, if we're kinder to them, if we don't push their buttons, then they'll stop doing that. And we have to take off those blinders and say, just a minute, this is the real behavior that's going on. I need to notice this and label it as abuse.
So domestic violence is all over the media these days, whether it's Ray Rice being fired from his team on the NFL, or it's CeeLo Green saying something inappropriate on Twitter. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the warning signs. What does it look like in an abusive relationship? And what are some of the dangers? What are some of the warning signs you're in a challenging relationship?
Well, I'm so glad that we're talking about it, because it is such an important subject, and I think it's a difficult one. I think in our culture, like with Ray Rice, like we don't really even get acknowledgement that something's going on until there's a hit, until there's a black and blue mark, until there's some kind of physical damage to one or the other. And men get abused too, so it's not just men abusing women. But there's so much more involved in an abusive relationship. If you look at the wheel of power and control, you have sexual abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, isolation. And those things don't get, somebody will stay with somebody and they will withstand, they will take that abuse until they go, well, at least he hasn't hit me, at least he's not, hurting me in some way, and sort of discarding all of these other really, really important signs of abuse that happen before we start, kind of going down the road of a real physically violent situation. So I think it's really important that we talk about all of those things and how we lead up to them.
But how does it start? I mean, people don't enter a relationship getting hurt and abused. They enter because they feel loved and valued, and well, hopefully, and they want to be a part of that person's life. So how does this become this slope of destruction into a relationship that is not good and it's damaging?
Well, two aspects. One is some people are too immature to be in a relationship, and we have to acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. And that's where, when you're in a relationship and you're struggling, and the more you struggle, you can go towards abuse quite often. And you have to realize that some relationships cannot be repaired, cannot be fixed. You have to end them, and that is repairing it, because you're in a relationship that doesn't have a potential of supporting your needs until that person or you grow up. And to a certain extent, the way I look at it as a therapist, both people generally need to grow up. Your partner to a certain extent is mirroring you, but it doesn't mean that you're causing them to be that way. They are that way, and you can't fix them or change them, and that's the trap people get into. Because as adults, we realize that, a successful person realizes I'm 100% accountable for what I get in my life. If I have a problem over here, I go, how can I change myself? How can I adjust to succeed? But you apply that principle to being in a mature relationship. You suddenly go, there's a problem, my partner's mad at me, my partner's misbehaving or whatever. You start to take responsibility and feel like, oh, if I just change myself, I just change myself. And it's not you. And actually that's called codependence, where it's you're changing yourself is actually allowing that person to get worse and worse and worse. So if we want to take responsibility, we have to recognize that by staying in a relationship sometimes we are encouraging a partner to get worse and worse, as opposed to letting them take responsibility for their happiness rather than depend on you and blame you for their unhappiness.
I think there's a big distinction too between being an adult and being an emotional grown-up. Because an adult is a stage of growth, like baby, toddler, preschooler, all of that, and then eventually you become an adult. But that doesn't mean you're emotional grown-up.
Yeah.
And you ask about what the signs are, the things you need to look for. Well, it's belittling and disrespect and bullying and verbal abuse, or conveniently forgetting what it is that you need or you want, or being unavailable all the time. And pretty much then you've got to start thinking, This is not great because we as women want to nurture that out of men sometimes. We think we can just take care of them enough if we just show up a little better, if we're kinder to them, if we don't push their buttons, then they'll stop doing that. And we have to take off those blinders and say, just a minute, this is the real behavior that's going on. I need to notice this and label it as abuse.
And I think sometimes that can be hard for anyone to do, and I think the key is to think about, has somebody else told you that they don't feel this relationship is safe for you? Has someone else in your life who you love and trust? And then you have to take that time to start reflecting and go internal and say, is this a respectful relationship? Am I respecting myself? Is my safety being met? My needs for safety and my needs for security being met in this relationship? And if the answer to that is no, then you might want to talk to someone. You might want to seek out a professional to talk to family, talk to friends, and kind of move the process forward to get yourself hopefully in a healthier place so you can say no or yes. Like John said, if you can go together and work it through, that's totally possible, I believe. But both people have to realize that what's happening is not okay.
We've talked about a variety of different signs from financial to emotional and beyond. I think the important thing that everybody's bringing out is that at the first sign of abuse, that's a big fat red flag that people need to pay attention to. And you need to do something about it immediately, not wait for it to digress into something worse.